If you've written a book, chances are you've considered customized commissioned art for your characters. Now, this is not your book cover. This is a separate conversation. You want character art or art to go on the inside of your book, to go on your website, to go on your social media, to go in book boxes and things like that. So what do you need to know about commissioning art? Well, aren't you lucky because I'm a multi-time best-selling author, I am a long-time professional photographer and designer, and I've worked with artists for many, many years. So let's break down a lot about this. First and foremost, you need to do your research. You need to understand what you're paying for, and you need to understand what you information-wise need to give to those people. So do your research. Not all artists are created the same. Not all artists use the same techniques. Not all artists are going to give you freedom on this. Not all artists are going to be costing the same amount. So you have to understand what's your budget, what are you willing to pay for a certain level of art, what type of art do you want, because art is so different across the board. You could have somebody draw the same character and have it look extremely different. So you need to go and do your research. Find out who other authors are using. Ask for recommendations. If you want to, you can go to places like Webtoon and Tapas and look for webcomic creators and see if you like their style. Then go to their social medias and see if they've taken commissions. There are so many ways that you can be doing this. We can actually talk about ways to find artists. And if you pay attention, I host events frequently for artists and authors to connect so authors can get commissioned pieces of their characters. If you want to do a new event, go ahead and let me know. We can talk about setting a new one up, but I know hundreds of artists that will love to work with you, and we've connected a whole bunch of them for different authors. So with that in mind, you're doing your research. Like their style. You cannot hire somebody and make them do something different than what they do. Like the style before you speak to them. You're going to want to check to see if they have a website. Depending on who they are, they may or they may not. Professionals should, but most of them don't. What I've noticed in this industry is a lot of them don't. So you will have to go to their social media. You're going to have conversations with them. And you want to be asking a lot of questions, and they should be providing a lot of information. If at any point you feel like you have to guide them through this process, maybe it's not somebody you should be working with, but you can do whatever you want. So with that in mind, you're going to have conversations. You're going to need to reach out. You're going to need to ask them what their pricing is if it's not listed somewhere. You're going to need to talk about potentially doing bulk orders if you're doing a bunch of different characters, or discounts, bundle rates, things like that. Most artists will consider it, but not all of them will. And then you have to be very clear about understanding what information they're going to need. So when they are doing the artwork, they're going to have very clear guidelines on the characters they're creating. Some artists will want to read the book, most will not. You can offer it. You are always welcome to offer it, and I always do offer it just in case they want to understand the essence of it, or they just want to see what they're creating. Even if they're not going to read it before they create it, I always offer them a digital copy if that's something that they want. You can do whatever you need. But you're going to have a very clear version of what they need to be creating. So you are going to want to come with a list of things like hair color and style and length, eye color, face shape, nose shape, chin shape. If any of those things are important, make sure you have it in there. If you can bring examples of like a Pinterest board, that's going to be great. If you can send links to like Google images that you're searching, if you've got an actor in mind that kind of represents that character, show them that stuff. They cannot draw the exact thing. So if you like see a really good picture of a really hot guy that is your main character and you want that specific pose, that's a no-no. That is copyright infringement. But you can be like, here's some suggestions, here's some visual representation, so you can kind of get a look at what I'm thinking of for this. Have conversations back and forth. This doesn't necessarily need to be a one and done thing. You can send them like paragraphs of information, but that's not going to necessarily be enough for them. And a lot of it's going to be back and forth. And a lot of artists will actually do like in the process check-ins. So not every artist will do this, but some of them will say, okay, here's the sketch. Do you like the sketch before I outline it and I start doing the coloring and all of those things? So some of them will randomly check in with you throughout the process, and that's a question to ask at the beginning. Will you be checking in? Will I see the different stages of this? Or is it, I hand over the information, you do it, and that's it? You also want to make sure you ask how many revisions. Sometimes you will get a certain number of revisions. Usually there's 2 revisions, maybe 3 revisions. Sometimes there's only 1. Sometimes there's none. It depends on what you pay for. So you have a lot of questions that you need to ask. You are asking what information they need to know. You were asking if they want to see visual representations of this. You were going to ask how many revisions. You were going to ask about potentially bundle rates if that's something that you want. You are going to have to ask about copyright. Does that transfer over to you? Does that stay with them? Are you paying extra for that? Ask questions about how you can use it. Sometimes they will allow you to commission things, but then you can't use it for anything. Sometimes you'll be charged more if you're using it in certain ways, like you are going to be giving it away in a book box, or you are going to be printing it and giving it away at book signings, or you are going to insert it into your book to print. Sometimes you won't. It depends on each individual artist, but you need to know what the terms are. There should be a contract that you sign. You should always be signing a contract that clearly spells out what you're getting. Not everybody does it, so you have to be very careful of these things to make sure that there's no issues later on. So you want to make sure that you're asking a lot of questions. How can I use this? What size are you going to be creating this? Sometimes if you have a specific need, like if you are doing this to print in a book, or you're doing this to blow up big for a poster that you're then going to give away or sell at your book conventions, or if you want to print it big on a banner, it's going to need to be a certain resolution. It's going to need to be a certain size. And if they make it tiny, that's going to end up blurry and pixelated when you print it big. So if you have a purpose for this, or if you think maybe someday in the future you might have a purpose for this, let them know in advance it needs to be a bigger scale size, because if it's not, what are you going to do? So you want to make sure that you are very, very clear about your potential uses, and make sure the licensure that you have for it is going to be covered by that. Sometimes people will get different pieces of artwork and then later on decide, hey, I actually want to do this thing, and they just do it without making sure it was covered or asking for their permission. So if you're doing things outside of the scope of what you are originally pitching and agreeing on with that artist, that could potentially come back to haunt you later on if you don't think it through, because you thought you had full rights to it. Most of the time, you will not. You will have limited rights, and that's what you should expect. And that doesn't mean that you can only use it one teeny tiny way. It could be a big, broad range of ways that you can be using it, but it is limited in that you don't have carte blanche to do whatever, whenever, at any time, and you own everything and you can do all the stuff. So ask about copyright, ask about transferring of rights and licensure and all of those things. You want to make sure it is going to fit, and you want to make sure as you're having conversation with them, you should be back and forth having conversation with them, you are getting good vibes and you feel safe and connected to them, because if they're hard to work with just setting things up, they are not an artist you want to work with. You have to make sure you find the right fit for you. So you have to be very clear about your expectations, and this is the important part. All these things should be done in email. They should not be done in Instagram DMs, because those are not legally binding, but emails are. You want to make sure that you have everything spelled out in a strategic place, your email, and you're having those conversations. And then you also want to talk about delivery of your images. Some artists, young artists, will not send it via email or a Dropbox or a Google Doc folder type thing. They're just going to send it through like Instagram DMs. And lower the pixelization. It's going to have that smaller resolution, and it's not going to work to your favor. So you got to talk about delivery too. How do you get access to these files? And of course, if you are going to print them, they also have to be created in certain color spectrums to print properly. And if you're doing things like backgrounds, if you're doing like a lot of dark colors, it could print very muddy. So if you're printing it, you got to be clear about the color delineation so that it prints properly. Artists should know this, but not all of them do. So you have to have a lot of conversations. The more you ask, the more conversations you have, the more you're going to learn if this is an experienced artist or somebody new. And there's nothing wrong with working with the newbies. I personally love working with new people to give them a shot. I love working with people who are brand new to this, who are doing their first commissions, and I'm helping them to get in front of a new audience. I love that, but oftentimes I will have to guide them through that process to help them set up their business and understand what the expectations are. Newbies aren't gonna know, which also means authors can sometimes pull things over on them, which is not great. But it will give you a very clear idea of whether you're working with a professional who's been doing this a long time or somebody who's just getting into the game. So ask questions, make sure you vibe with their style, make sure you like what's going on, and then check on deadlines. How long does it take them to create these pieces of artwork? When can you expect it back? What are the deadlines for check-ins? What are the deadlines for turning in the final piece? What are the deadlines for revisions if necessary? Make sure you know so that it doesn't take you months and months and months to do this. If you're working with a good artist, it shouldn't take too terribly long. You're looking at, if you're doing a single piece, you should be looking about a month if they're taking a lot of care to do this, if they're taking a lot of time and they're making a lot of revisions as they go, that kind of thing. If they are booked out, of course, it could take longer. If it's somebody who's highly established, like book cover designer, sometimes it takes a while to get on the roster to get it done. So that could take longer. But when they start working on it, it should not take them terribly long to get it done unless they're going like incredibly in depth. Now, one more thing I do want you to check on is whether or not they're using AI to create any of this. We know from our legal playlist here on the channel that anything created by AI is not available for copyright protection, which means it can't be copyright protected. And if you put something like that in your novel, it could wreck your copyright protection for your novel. It could wreck your copyright protection if you're using it inside of something else that is going to affect your copyright. So you want to make sure that you understand whether or not they're using AI and make a mindful decision of whether or not you're going to work with them, because it could potentially hurt you, it could hurt your standing, or if they're using AI, it also means that anybody can steal it and use it however they want, but it's AI, so you can't press charges, the artist can't press charges, like you're out of luck. So at that point, ask the questions, know what's going on, make the accurate decisions for yourself, and check that legal playlist, AI and Publishing. I'll link it down below for you to make it very easy for you to understand what you can and can't do and how it can potentially be hurting your copyright of your novel and of the other things you're doing in your author career. We've got a whole playlist on legal, ethical, and creative ways that you can be using AI and things you should stay away from because it could potentially hurt you. So check out the playlist down below. Working with artists on commissions is really, really fun. I highly recommend keeping a hold of the good artists. If you find somebody you love, work with them all the time. But I also really like trying different artists. Every time I write a different book, if I'm getting artwork, I'll try someone new because I love that with each new series or each new book, it has a different artistic vibe to it. I don't always work with the same people, even though I love a lot of those people. I like to work with different people for unique looks. And then I can use this art on my website, on my social medias. I can use it in my book if I want. I can use it for book boxes. I can use it as giveaway prints and postcards at book signings. I can use it in so many ways. If you want to have a conversation on ways to use your commissioned art, go ahead and let me know. We can actually create a video on that for you. And we've actually had a lot of conversations about that before on our live streams. So you might be able to find some of those on the channel too. But you have some really cool ways that you can be using that artwork as long as you've had those conversations and you have those permissions to use them in those ways. Drop your questions about art commissions for your books and ways that you can be using them, all of those things, and follow along for daily videos helping you navigate the world of publishing from your writing to your publishing to your marketing to make this your most profitable year ever with less stress and less time commitment because your business is working for you while you are busy living your best life and your author dreams. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.